My name is Zipporah Dankwa, and on this channel we talk everything faith, business, our careers, and excellence. So, welcome and let's learn. Today we're going to talk about how to be obedient, especially over fear, how we are going to be trusting God in the difficult seasons. I always share the story about me coming to Ghana and how the decision was made because God told me to come. Before that, if you believe it or not, I also wanted to come. I was tired of being an illegal immigrant. I realized that I felt very disillusioned with the life that I was living, but I really just wanted to escape it and come back to my home country. But even in that time, it did not work. Like, doors did not open for me. I was finding it difficult for me to even want to come back home. But guess what? After I had given in, after I had just continued the course as I had at that time, when God told me to come, the doors just opened almost instantaneously. I got my ticket to come to Ghana, like out of the blue. It wasn't even out of my own pocket. Everything just lined up. I was able to get a place to stay when I come over here. My sister just within that month that I was supposed to come, received an opportunity to live in our family home, which had been occupied and now was vacant. So that was just an open door, and everything just kind of fell into place for me to be here. But I had to obey. The second story that comes into mind is earlier last year. I think I share about around May, I went to Uganda with my family, and this was on a church mission trip. And during this trip, my husband and I got to that point where we realized that we have to walk more in obedience with God if we are trying to walk in faith. Because I think leading up to that, we had been studying on faith and we really wanted to become people of faith. But the instruction clearly for us was that we had to be obedient and start walking in obedience of God. Before our trip, I was kind of contacted for one of the first speaking engagements since I had been pregnant and, given birth and all that. So this was my first public appearance or speaking engagement since then. And I had already received this invitation and accepted it, and I already knew what I was going to say. But following wanting to be obedient, God flipped what he wanted me to say. He said, you know what? I want you to talk about being an illegal immigrant, and I want you to talk about your motherhood journey that did not become a fairy tale beginning. And you can imagine that, first of all, I felt a lot of shame around the fact that I had been an illegal immigrant for so long. There was a lot of anxiety in me to be able to even share it with people that were close to me, talk less of complete strangers on the internet. As well, my motherhood journey was something that was still deeply fresh. The pain of having my child hospitalized for the first 2 weeks of his life was not an easy thing for me to do, but I chose to obey God above the fear that I was feeling in my heart. And the people that came to meet me afterwards to share how that encouraged them and how much it touched their hearts, it makes me realize that we have to trust God even when we feel uncertain and we don't know what this season holds. Again, God has called me to be on social media, and I have no idea what the big plan is, but I know that I'm choosing obedience over the fear and anxiety of the internet. I think I share over and over again how social media has always been in some way the bane of my existence before now. And the fact that God would call me to something that I would say is not naturally, like, when it comes to me putting myself out there, something that comes very naturally to me, is really something of me choosing the fear of being disobedient to God trumps the fear of the discomfort that I'm feeling right now as I'm saying yes to this journey. Lastly, I want to share the story of obedience, where God has called me to reach out to one of my ex-bosses and apologize for lack of integrity. Mind you, this person fired me before 2020's lockdown happened. And I felt a lot of grief and a lot of hurt because of how it also happened, because it was kind of in a very unfair way, according to me. But God wanting me to be the one to go and rectify this relationship was very astonishing to me. And honestly, it took me 3 whole days to be able to walk in that obedience. Right after that, he asked me to go and out of love, purchase things for somebody, a family member that we had been estranged for a while now, and to go to them and to apologize to them and to lay gifts at their feet. This again, when I received the instruction, I was immediately like, oh no. Oh no. I remember my sister looking over at me and she's like, did the Holy Spirit tell you to do something? And I'm like, oh, how did you know? She's like, the way you are exclaiming, it doesn't sound like something that is just from your mind. And when I did it, man, to be honest, it took everything within me, every step of the way. And I think that was God removing something from me, something that I could not do by myself, especially if I continued walking in fear of what people would think, of what that person would think, or if they turned me away or didn't accept me. I had to choose obedience over that fear. Let me share just 5 things that I thought I reflected on in this walk of obedience. Number 1, referencing Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. God really does know the plans at the end of it all. Even in applying for a job, God is the one who literally told me that I should apply for this job. And when I was in the application process, my CV, which had some elements that were not holding true, he told me to go back and rectify that in the middle of my application process. As in, I had gone through the first interview, I'm now approaching my second interview, and he said, rectify your CV and send it back to them. That was the most fearful thing I had to do, because yet again, this CV situation came from a place of doubting myself, a place where I felt that I needed other things to make me feel qualified for what God had called me to do. But the truth is that God knows the plans that he has for us. Although in this situation, it ended in praise, meaning that they reached out to me and said, thank you so much for your attention to detail. We will note this, which was the scariest, which was not what I expected it to be. The fear of their response was absolutely different from the response of grace that I received. Again, I know that this was God's plan to show me something. Because if it had ended in the other way, I know that again, it was God's plan to teach me something. And the first point is that when God tells you to go, you have to go. Because not listening to what God asks you to do, the consequences of this way outweighs the discomfort of actually doing it. As hard as it was for me to reach out to my employer, my employer from 5-6 years ago, to speak vulnerably about lack of integrity in something that seems seemingly small to everybody, but God has shown me that he holds me to a higher standard. This was a very scary reality, but not doing it, I realized, would have cost me even more. It would have cost me everything. Number 2, the power of obedience and saying yes on time. I was just giving this analogy to my husband when I was explaining this, was that just imagine if somebody you absolutely loved, let's just say your mother, your father, your grandmother, was sick and at the point of death in a hospital bed. But because you did not have the money and the resources to be able to pay for the medical attention she needed, they wouldn't be able to attend to her until they had that. And you reached out to a very close friend of yours and you said, hey, can you please borrow me this money? My mother, or my father, or my grandmother is in dire straits and they need this. And they said, oh my goodness, that is so horrible. Absolutely, I have the money. I will send it to you immediately. And they don't. And a day passes, 2 days passes, 3 days passes. You keep nudging them and they say, oh yes, of course, I'm going to do it immediately. And they do not do it. A month later, you have buried your loved one. And the funeral has even passed, and this person comes with the full sum of the money that you needed in order to help your loved one. Would that have been obedience? Yes. But would it have been at the right time? Absolutely not. The truth of the matter is that there are so many people whose lives are tied to your career, whose lives are tied to the obedience of what God is calling you to do, whether in business, whether in your family. That obedience, what God is calling you to, is a timely instruction, and you have to do it, but do it in time. Don't wait until you feel comfortable. Don't wait until the anxiety is over. Don't wait until that fear has passed. Unfortunately, lives are attached to it. Your own life and your own destiny is attached to your obedience. So do it, and do it on time. Number 3, God will not let you go when you are not ready to go. He will let you go when He is ready for you to go. There's so many instances. How many of us don't want to japa? And you have done everything to try and leave your country, leave your city, leave your job or the situation that you're in. But it is just not the right time, because maybe we are running away from the situation. We are running away because what God is asking us to do, of being faithful in our work, of being faithful in our business, feels so uncomfortable. It would be so much easier if I was working in an organization that can pay me way better, and that would make it better. But God is saying, be faithful where you are. He's saying, be faithful with what He has given you. And unfortunately, most of the time, you will not be released into the next level until you have overcome this level. I give you the example of not being able to even leave a country where I was an illegal immigrant because of the constraints that I had. But when I accepted that this is where I am and this is what I can do while I am where I am, things worked out. By the time I was even leaving, the work that I had been doing had reached international level. We were approached by some very big organizations that do festivals in South Africa for us to do the festival that we had been doing on their grounds and in partnership with them. But at that time, God said, well, it's time to move on to the next thing. And I had to leave that behind with my partners and the people that I was working with at the moment. But I had worked vigorously and I had worked tirelessly. And that is perhaps what God is calling you to do. He said, until you overcome this level, you are not ready for the next level. So instead of wanting to run away, instead of wanting to already move out of where you are, maybe say, God, what do you want me to learn in this level, so that He can prepare you for the next level. Number 4. God will not always give you the full picture. But guess what? He will always give you where to start. I had no idea where I was going with the work that God had told me to do. I was absolutely ready to be a stay-at-home mom who does PR on, consulting on the side and radio station on the weekends. I wanted to do that. That was my plan. Funny enough, a very good friend of mine is the exact opposite. This girl has degrees for days. She's been in law, overcome it, and God told her, I want you to homeschool your children. Every chance that she looked to get jobs that she was qualified for, they would tell her she was overqualified for it. And the jobs that she went for that fit her perfectly, she just didn't hear anything back. And God told her, you are not the breadwinner in your home, your husband will be. And this man has no degree, but he's the one that God wanted to use to take care of their home. She has been called to her kids. And that is what she tells me all the time. She said, if God gives me the go ahead to go back to the workplace, I will do it in a heartbeat. And for me, that was the exact opposite. God may not show me what the full picture of this is, why He has called me to what He's called me to. But He tells me where to start. And that is where you have to be faithful. Because as God said, His word is a lamp to my feet. Sometimes you will only see where your feet is and where the next step is. You might not see the full thing, but God will always show you where to start. So start there and be faithful, and He will keep showing you the next thing. In a few years, we're going to look back and see His wonderful tapestry in our career and in our businesses. Number 5, and finally, I labeled this, everything happens for a reason. And obviously, as I went over this with my husband, he's like, but that is very hard pill to swallow, that everything happens for a reason. But it is not so much everything happens for a reason, but that our God works good out of everything that happens. There are some things that happen because of our mistakes, and there are things that happen because of other people's greed and mistakes. But God is in it, working it all out for our good. I look at the story of Job and I look at the story of Joseph. We read the story of Job and we know the conversation that happened in the heavenlies concerning Job, and that God was not allowing him to be by himself in the situation he was in. And I was thinking to myself that even if Job had not been restored, which he was restored in the very end, but reading Job's story when I am feeling down in the dumps, or things that are happening around me just feel unfair, and it feels like, God, is it me? Is it what I did, or this thing that happened to me is the reason why this is happening? I go back to the story of Job and realize that God is even in the midst of our pain. When we lose things and it doesn't make sense because the enemy is after us, he's after our faith. A story like Job exists for me to reference. Sometimes we may not see the reason that is being, and we might not even see the reason in our lifetime, but you have no idea how many people's lives are affected by your life. Yesterday, I heard a story about Billy Graham holding a massive crusade in a country, and he as he goes on to tell the story, he talks about how amazingly successful this crusade was, how many souls came to Christ during that program. And when he went back at the end of the program to thank God for more souls and how these is being held into his account in heaven, the Lord told him that these souls are not to your account, that these souls are to the account of an old woman in this city who had been praying that Billy Graham would come into her city to hold a revival because she wanted people to be saved. She had apparently been praying for years, and when it finally happened, God credited to her, those souls to her heavenly account. There are so many things that we have done, so many seeds in the lives of people. The way that you have worked for some companies as if it is your own, maybe it didn't even end well, but it is happening for your good. First of all, you've been sharpened, and that is some lessons that the enemy can never take away from you. Don't let that harden your heart if you're going through it right now. If you've gone through it in the past, let there be forgiveness, and let there be a softening of your heart. That God has worked through the evils of man, the good that is happening in your life right now. Going back to the story of Joseph, do you know, when I read how old Joseph was when he was thrown in the pit, he was 17 years old. And when he finally meets his family again, he's 37. Because he was 30 years old when he became a prime minister of Egypt. And it was after the 7 years of plenty that he gets to meet his family again. So think about it. He was about 37 years. That's like 20 years from the moment that happened. He was imprisoned. My husband said he was almost raped. He was imprisoned. He was falsely accused. He was a slave. And through all this, he was so faithful that he was always put in charge everywhere that he went. As a slave, he was put in charge of Potiphar's house. As a prisoner, he was put in charge of the prisoners. And as the person who interprets the king's dream, he was put in charge of a whole city. As in, beyond the king of the Pharaoh, he was the most powerful person in that city. And what was his heart posture when he met his family members? He said, "Don't be afraid. What you meant for evil, God has worked it out for good. He has sent me ahead to be your savior." That is what we should keep in mind as we walk in obedience. Because as we walk in obedience, I'm not saying that what we fear most might not happen. I'm not saying that our anxiety is for no reason, or that nothing bad or suffering will not come along our way. But what I want you to hold on to is that God is in the midst of this, and that the little thing that he has called you to do, you have the obligation. The responsibility lies in you to do it to the best of your ability. So I hope this has blessed you. And if there is any examples of obedience in your life that you had to take, even when all odds looked so bad, even when you were afraid, please share it. This is an opportunity for us to also be encouraged by your story. Share it in the comments. Leave your story and let us be encouraged through it. Godly Workforce, if you are enjoying this, please subscribe, like this video, share it with somebody else you think would benefit from this. And I will see you in our next video. Godly Workforce, let's keep working. Bye-bye.